it taking place. Like this kind of looks like since
Sharon Moore, the former
Hey everybody, how you doing? How you doing? How you doing? We are excited to be here. We are excited to be here because today we're talking about love data. And I think that, what was really important for me to share with everyone is that love data um, has come from a place that took a while to get here. So if you haven't grabbed the book, here it is. It's on Amazon. Thanks to everyone who pre-ordered the book, who supported us in pre-orders. I appreciate you. Much love. Thank you so much. And it's taking a while to kind of get to this point, just because I've been busy, just like I'm sure you've been busy, and the new year and all the things that happen, all those good things. But we're here, so we're gonna chat a little bit about love data, and I'm really excited to talk about it because I think for so long, you know, I received so many questions about hard work and the impetus behind hard work and what it means and where it came from and how it translates into our everyday lives. That love data kind of was birthed a long time ago, but we just reached a point to where I was really able to kind of pull together um, the elements of love data that were necessary. I was able to tell the story in a way that I wanted to tell it, and it was timely. Love data, as in all my writing, are always is all my writing is centered around personal experiences, personal lived experiences, whether it be my personal life, my professional life, real stories, but they intersect with real meaningful learning experiences that to me demonstrate more of what the idea and thoughts behind the writing is about, as opposed to just saying it outright. Right. So I fully believe that storytelling is an art form and science, and I try and bring a mixture of both into my writing. But let me tell you how Love Data started. It started The idea of love data and why it's important began actually right around 14 years ago, 14 and a half years ago. And it began in a conversation that went really poorly. So if anybody has ever worked in a professional environment, workplace environment, where you had a supervisor that you were really fond of, and you may have had a moment to where you thought you said something, did something that they were going to fire you, then you can lean on in. And if you haven't had that, still lean on in. But if you have, you're going to really connect to this story. The premise behind Love Data started in this conversation I had with the supervisor. I really was fond of this supervisor. Uh, the supervisor was everything to me in a sense. And in the moment that I was sitting before him, I was having a moment of frustration, anger, confusion, all the things that were kind of bubbling up inside of me. And I was lashing out at him basically. Now, mind you, I think the premise by why I was upset may have been correct, but the way I did it and the way I articulated my frustration was not appropriate. Or maybe not appropriate is not a word, but it wasn't healthy. It wasn't kind. I was just frustrated. And the conversation lasted, for a little while. And when I left, I literally thought to myself, like, he's going to fire me. I believed he would fire me. I said he probably should fire me. And that was 14 years ago. But the reason why it influenced the book Love Data is because in that moment, I realized that I was lashing out at him. I was lashing out at him because I looked at him as a father figure. And because I looked at him as a father figure, I wasn't really lashing out at him. I was lashing out at my dad. And what that signaled to me for the first few years of me kind of replaying it in my mind was I need to work on my perspective. I need to work on my patience. I need to work on my ability to pause and reflect. I need to work on a lot of things. But not until a few years ago that I recognized that that was a love data moment. It was a point in time that love data presented itself. And what do I mean by that? What I realized is that I was lashing out at my dad through him. And when you can look at something as a negative, I actually had to rethink it. Though it might have been a negative moment in a sense, what it demonstrated for me was that I was really showcasing, or I was expressing my love for my dad. It was a data point. It was a love data point that presented itself in a package that may not have come across so healthy or so kind. But behind it, underneath it, what undergirded it was love. And I share that because oftentimes we are in moments in the workplace and in our personal lives where we have conflict, where there's frustration, where there's anger, where there's things that on the surface can be perceived as negative, but really in the foundation, in the root, there's love that is centered. And I want to talk about why that matters. So when I wrote Love Data, I wrote Love Data from the lens of love data exists everywhere, even in the most complex spaces, as well as in the spaces that we may consider on the surface negative, toxic, all the things, right? Dramatic. But deep underneath them, there exists love. And I want to talk a little bit about what that means. But first, I want to share something with you. I want to open up and read the passage. This is the longest passage I'm going to read today. I'm not going to read long passages. But this is in the introduction of the book to give you a little bit of context and to introduce you to the book itself. So here we go. Apologize for my voice. Apologize. Sinuses, you know what it is if you're in the South. The language of leaders and followers may seem outdated and academic, and one may have a point. Even to assume that one may be a follower or desire to be a follower has its negative and traditionalist connotations. Yet, there exists a need for all of us to embrace being leaders and followers. If, in fact, we are one, we are the other. And if we are not one, we assuredly are not the other. These are extreme statements, yes. However, the point I am placing before us is that to be a leader, people must want to follow. And in order to be a follower, you must be willing to be led. All of us are doing both, with varying responsibilities, roles, and objectives at some point in life. The questions are, do we know it? And are we up for the task? When studies are conducted and teams are asked how they become so successful, how their culture became so healthy, they respond affirmatively. It's because of the connectedness between leaders and followers, teammates, and the overall health of the culture. There is no mistake. In my research, I found what I always knew to be true, but never had the data for. Love increases performance. And more than that, intimacy is the foundation of this type of love. So the reason why I believe that's important, critically important, is that when I wrote Love Data, I wanted the subtitle is What We Know About Love, Leader-Follower Relationships, and Workplace Excellence. Very, very important to understand how we talk about leader-follower relationships and workplace performance. And so that's kind of the context. That's kind of the baseline, the foundation. And what's important is in most workplaces, especially today, we shy away, one, from talking about love. We don't talk about love at all, to the most part. But two, we don't really sit down and think through, what do we know about leader-follower relationships? Not solely from the academic lens, but also from everyday practical experience that we have with leaders and followers. We don't talk about power dynamics. We don't talk about the structure in which, we talk about being authentic in the workplace, but how many people do you know truly believe they can be authentic in the workplace? So to that case, love data is kind of an intro to how do we collectively begin to have meaningful, thoughtful, open discussions about what it means to look at all the circumstances that we experience and find the love within. Find the love data, right? All right. So today I'm going to take 3 chapters and I'm going to read a couple of excerpts to give some positioning of how we can begin to look at love data, how we can begin to understand fully. So I'm going to start with chapter 4. And the title of chapter 4 is Blocking and Tackling. The subtext to Blocking and Tackling, the chapter, is a quote by head coach Nick Sirianni. And he said this after the Philadelphia Eagles won the Super Bowl, not this past year, but year before last. And I grabbed onto it, and you may have heard it as well, if you're a football fan. He said after the Super Bowl, in a post-game interview on the field, I think he said on the field, you can't be great without the greatness of others. And that hit me. You can't be great without the greatness of others. And I love it. It was very eloquently stated. And I want people to really pull from that. Blocking and tackling. This chapter is really about the importance of the leader-follower relationship and why we need both. You need blocking and tackling in football. You can't have one without the other. They are not mutually separate. They have to go together. They are a unit, a pair. We got to have both. And in this chapter, I'm going to read you a couple of excerpts. I was saying they aren't mutually exclusive. I apologize. It's the sinuses, but we're going to do this tonight. As a leader, one of the first questions we should often ask ourselves is, am I putting my team in position to win? Very simple. Very simple, but very powerful, I believe. I believe that if we're asking ourselves the question as a leader, am I putting my team in a position to win? It keeps us honest. It keeps us in grace. It keeps us humble. It keeps us looking inward. It keeps us as leaders understanding the full mission of the role. My role as a leader is to position you to win. And that's a part of the blocking. You may have even had a supervisor in the past to even say to you, hey, I'm here to block for you so you can tackle. If you've never heard someone say that, then that's the thing. But if you have, you know exactly where I'm coming from. I've had supervisors, a couple before, say, hey, let me block for you so you can tackle. And so that's where this is about, positioning people to win. The second excerpt I want to share with you is Being a follower does not exclude me from also being a leader in the same environments. I believe wholly that a part of this idea that outside of just our culture in America, at least, that being a follower is a bad thing. Like, I can be a follower and a leader at the same time, meaning I can block and tackle if need be. And so the question doesn't become which one do I have to do. The question becomes what is required or what is needed of me at this moment as a leader and as a follower. Because no matter what role you have in the organization, you are both in some way. All right. The third excerpt from chapter 4 of Blocking and Tackling is, if as leaders and followers, we are committed to blocking and tackling, we must not only be capable, but we must be willing. There's a famous quote by Coach Tomlin from Pittsburgh Steelers, former Coach Tomlin of the Pittsburgh Steelers. He's still alive, but he resigned. He left that role recently. But he says, in a famous quote that I love, I know you're capable, but are you willing? And that's really the sense of, hey, I can look at you and say that you're capable as a leader, as a follower, but are you willing? Are you willing to sacrifice? Are you willing to put in the work of introspection? Are you willing to love someone and look at the love data deep down, even when they may do something or say something that's not as kind? My supervisor, thankfully, was able to recognize that something was deeper than what was happening on the surface. He was able to recognize that there's more here. I just don't know what. And so as a leader, our journey really will be the telltale sign of how we're able to read surface language to be able to understand that something may be happening deeper. Because if in fact we are not in a place as a leader to be able to position ourselves, to have grace, to have patience and pause, then we become a part of the surface level emotion, whether it be anger or frustration or disdain or whatever it may be. So I know you're capable as a leader, but are you willing to do the necessary work to be prepared for those circumstances? As a follower, similarly, are you willing? I know you're capable, but are you willing? And to that point, the answer may be no. The answer may be, I'm not even sure I'm capable. But I think more importantly is the question itself and how we can begin to integrate that question into our daily lives. All right. So let's hop to chapter 6. Chapter 6. The only way out is in. The only way out is in. Sarah Jakes Roberts, the Reverend Sarah Jakes Roberts, says, the question is not what I'm supposed to do. The question is, who do I need to become? It's page 101. It's not what am I supposed to do? The question is who I need to become. And understanding who I need to become is a powerful question, but it makes you sit and think. It takes the onus off of external materialistic elements of life, factors of life, and it puts it back inside of you. Because who you need to become is an inside out game. What I am supposed to be is an outside in game. So that's the question. Who do you need to become? The first excerpt I want to share with you from this is a research excerpt. So research studies for the past 25 years have studied and identified that the most effective leaders take care of their wellness, eat more nutritious foods, and attain adequate rest that provides them more energy and clarity to perform at their best in the workplace. The love data is clear. Wellness is not a should have, it is definitely a must have in order for leaders and followers to collectively perform their best. I often, in jest, say that I can tell how great of a leader you are by how well you take care of yourself. And though it may be in jest, it's really true to most of a degree. How well we take care of ourselves really can be reflected in our leadership. It will be reflected in our leadership. And that doesn't mean you have to be, a triathlete or, in a gym 3 times a day. But I believe that we can give ourselves honest assessment of how we treat our bodies, how much rest we receive, how we take care of ourselves, how we're cognizant of if we're not feeling well and what can we do to adjust. And the rationale behind that is this. The research is there. But I solely believe when we say we're frustrated and stressed and all the time and leadership is hard and it's difficult and all those things may be true. But the question I may have is, who are you becoming? Because I believe that when we're in those spaces of high stress environments, high stress feelings, emotions, high frustration, high discontent, that we're becoming what we are allowing ourselves to experience. And that is the key. Great, effective leaders, people that other people want to follow, those people are taking care of themselves. The greatest investment of time and energy and resources is the inside out game. Okay. The last excerpt is the amazing thing about wellness is that everything that's transpiring within your organization is directly correlated to how well your leaders and followers are caring for themselves. Everything that's happening within the organization is a reflection of how people are caring for themselves. And not only how they're caring for themselves, but also ultimately how we are caring for them. Right? So it's an and game. It's not one or the other. It's both and. And I believe fundamentally that when we look at organizations they experience great, healthy cultures that people want to return to, that they love coming in to work on Monday morning. They hate leaving on Friday because they just love the feeling of being in this place. That not only is it a culture where people are encouraged to take care of themselves, the culture itself is taking care of them. And that's something that we can sense immediately by something as simple as how we have meetings, how we have open discussions, how we ideate together, how we take time to get to know one another, how we build relationship. All these elements feed into our ability to uncover, again, love data, to uncover what's beneath the surface of high stress environments, what's beneath the surface of frustration and conflict, what's beneath the surface of, I don't like that teammate because they get on my nerves all the time. What's beneath the surface is love data. Because I knew at that moment a few years ago that I wasn't mad at my supervisor in that moment, in that room. I was expressing the love that I had for my father and the frustration that I had with him and it came out with my supervisor. That was a place that actually centered around love, but you would never know it because of the surface level emotion and how it presented itself in the moment. I hope that's landing. I hope that's connecting. All right, hold on. Let me get some water. Get some water because my voice is gone. All right, we only have one more chapter. So, I'm jumping to chapter 9. So, chapter 9, the title of chapter 9 is Love is Data. Love is Data. And this is the last chapter of the book. And I wanted to round it off with a story. I hope you grab the book, Love Data, because there's some great stories in here. The story I share in this last chapter is a heartfelt one, a powerful story about someone who you need to know about. So I hope you grab the book. I'll leave it at that. So the subtext in chapter 9, Love is Data, is a quote by Clint Pulver. And I want you to take this quote, and I want you to take it and run with it and give it to your team and love on your team as much as you can from this quote. It's not just getting your employees to say, I love it here. It's also about them saying, I love who I am when I am here. You hear me? It's not just getting your employees to say, I love it here. It's also about them saying, I love who I am when I am here. They love who they're becoming, meaning that the place that they spend most of their time at is depositing within them the ability to become the person who they love being. That's a powerful responsibility, and a responsibility that many of us would suggest that in years prior, decades prior in the workplaces, that wasn't a responsibility of the workplace. But we are a different world now. And workplaces have different responsibilities. And so that quote to me is just it's everything to me. It's everything, because when we can have our teams really have this feeling that's authentic, then we're doing something well. I'm going to read a couple of excerpts from this chapter. The first is a research excerpt. Studies show something unsettling. Most workplaces aren't wired for the human side of working life. You may already know that. Most workplaces aren't wired for the human side of life. The irony of this is that why wouldn't we be? Why wouldn't we in workplaces be wired for human life? Because every team member comes into the workplace with life. You know how life is lifing? Life is lifing regardless if we're inside the workplace or outside the workplace. It's lifing. So why aren't we wiring the workplace in order to not only respond to that, but actually help design a workplace that is wired to support that, to support when life starts lifing, right? I believe fundamentally, not only through my beliefs, but also through our research, that when we are designing cultures as such, that we then build leaders and followers that cooperatively are able to work together in a manner which we can see beyond the layers of the surface, the layers of frustration and stress and conflict. And we can see below that something exists below all of that always. 99.99% of the time, I firmly believe that beneath all of the anger, frustration, conflict, stress, you name it, there's love that's centered. Love is centered somewhere. It may not be love towards you, but there's love centered, meaning something is connected to a love source that is now acting out, behaving out in a manner, expressing out in a manner that is contrary, because it's on the surface, it's contrary to love. It's surface. And if we're designing a place where we're wired to embrace the humanness of life that's lifing at all times, then we have a higher probability of seeing below that surface. All right. Then one or two more excerpts. How many more? Two more. All right. So I love this. It's a kind of a quote, but kind of like a something you can put up on the board where you can kind of really lean into and remind yourself. Not perfection, but commitment. Not intensity, but consistency. Not manipulation, but love. Not perfection, not intensity, not manipulation, but commitment, consistency, and love. It's work. It's hard work. It's hard work. It's something to put up on the billboard, but it's more importantly, it's something to live. It's something to think about because it's not going to be perfection. Like, we're human. We're going to make missteps. But it is commitment. It is acknowledging that you're committed to figuring it out, to designing places that are healthier, designing a workplace that's wired to see humanness, designing workplaces that are building leaders and followers in a sense to work cooperatively, designing workplaces where people have a feeling and an understanding that I am both leader and follower, designing workplaces whereby in which I'm not choosing one or the other. I'm actually seeing what is required in this moment, and such that I can activate in that moment to be as such. It's consistency, not intensity, because we can be intense in spurts, but can we be consistent? Can we demonstrate time and time again what it means to care, to show grace, to dig below the surface level, to try and figure out what's transpiring as opposed to just rebut the emotion, the surface level? Can we be consistent in our ability as we're building and developing and learning together? And then love, not manipulation. This is a big one. Because for the past 13 years, as we work with organizations, thousands and thousands of leaders, even the most well-intentioned organizations have a culture of manipulation. And the reason why is because we have not collectively adopted a fundamental standard to say that we're not going to manipulate. We're going to be open, honest, and loving. And to that point, it is a journey, but it can begin today. Hopefully it will begin as you read Love Data. I believe Love Data will begin to position our thoughts to align more with our actions. So hopefully you'll grab it. All right, the last excerpt. I think it's the last excerpt. Yeah. No, it's not. Two more excerpts. Catholic priest and author Henry Nouwen shares that joy does not simply happen to us. We have to choose joy and keep choosing it every day. As a human, let's just take the workplace aside, put the workplace aside. As a human, this is relevant. If you're a leader or you have a leadership role, because remember, leaders are followers as well. Whatever role you're in, whatever role you are leading in, following in, if you don't choose joy for yourself, it's hella hard to choose joy for someone else. If you can't choose joy for yourself, how can we extend joy or a sense of joy to someone else? It's not that you can make people joyous, but a joyful spirit is contagious. A joyful spirit acknowledges that not only is it okay to be joyous, but it is necessary that we're joyous, that we enjoy our lives, that we come into spaces where even in the toughest of times, we can choose joy. The question remains, though, from an inside out experience, we have to choose joy for ourselves first. It's a choice. And more importantly, I believe it's a decision. All right. To follow it up and to end on a great note as well, I want to talk about this, and it talks about joy as well. But a workplace that prioritizes joy creates an environment where people and culture can flourish regardless of the business outcomes. I think that's a great kind of end note for today. That a culture that chooses joy is going to see a joyous return. A culture that chooses joy may not be perfect, but it can be committed. It may not step away from all the outdated, antiquated policies that are more manipulative, but they're moving towards love. It may not have as much consistency, but it's moving away from just intense moments, spurts. It's choosing and making a decision to move forward into spaces that are more committed, more consistent, and more loving. And those cultures that choose those variables of not only a workplace, but life in general, those persons are going to be healthier leaders and followers. Those persons are going to contribute to the business overall in ways that we can't even qualify or quantify. But love data really is, I think, the introduction to how do we articulate what's transpiring beneath the surface? How do we understand not only what's happening beneath the surface, but how do we redesign, reconstruct our inner thoughts, our inner heart, and ultimately our collective opportunity to be leaders and followers in a space that actually requires that we not only see each other, but we see within ourselves. So that's a few excerpts from Love Data. I pray that you grab the book. I pray that it feeds you and that you share it. We're going to be back here talking about Love Data more. But I just want to thank everyone. Thank you again for your pre-orders, everyone that grabbed it. Thank you for everyone that will grab it. And we'll be back talking about more about Love Data all throughout the year. All right. Talk soon.